What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I appreciate you joining me once again. As you know, I do not edit these videos. I get on here as someone who has struggled with the previous drug addiction, and I just shoot the shit. I just talk. I tell stories. I talk about my life, and just hope that some of my stories and some of the things that I've gone through, that there are people out there that those stories and experiences resonate with, and that maybe somebody else out there hears those stories and says, oh yeah, and it makes them think, or makes them reconsider some things, or reconsider where they might be at in their current relationship with any sort of drug. Because I've been on plenty of different ones now, haven't I? I think they call that a polyaddict. um, Thanks for that word, Ronnie. I actually forgot that that is what you call it. Someone who, anything that has a psychotropic sort of effect on the brain, I can potentially become addicted to that. And I think a lot of the folks that watch my videos can relate to that. So if I will ask, if you've been watching my videos, just a handshake that'll do. I'm providing the service. I'm providing content for free. You don't have to pay anything for it. All you have to do is just take a second and just click that subscribe button. If you like the format of just some guy just getting on here, not editing anything, just kind of shooting off the top of his brain and from his heart where he's been and where he currently is and where he plans on going, all that stuff. If you enjoy that, hit the subscribe button. That's all I ask. I mean, it helps me out, to have more subscribers to the channel. So I just wanted to say that right out of the gate. And I'm going to pick up on my story. I've had several people who watch my videos regularly to comment and say, hey, I like hearing the stories. I think you should tell more of the stories from when you were in active drug addiction to like pain pills and other opiates and stuff like that. Because I'm telling you, man, I talk about some stuff on here that is or would be downright embarrassing, to be honest with you. And that's why I called this channel That's Right, I Said It. Because when you hear some of the stuff that I talk about, a lot of people will be like, wow, I can't believe he's talking about that. Can't believe he said that. And that's why I called it That's Right, I Said That. You heard that correctly. I talk about stealing medications from people. I talk about, losing my virginity as a 12-year-old kid on here, and how that negatively has impacted my life and my relationships, and objectifying women. And there is nothing that is off limits on this channel. And I'm pretty much an open book. I've only been doing this for maybe 3 months now, so you certainly haven't heard everything. You haven't heard the whole gamut of what I've experienced in my life. But I'm a 47-year-old man, and you're talking about a lot of data, talking about a lot of experiences, and I could probably do this channel for 10 years straight and just talk 6 hours every day about it, and you'd still never hear every experience that I've had involving drugs or other defining events in my life. So but I do talk about those things. And if you enjoy that, and if you enjoy hearing that, and I've had a couple of people say, I love your stories, I love the way you tell stories and stuff, I appreciate that. You guys have no idea, because I'm just some random guy, man. I'm just some random guy who had big hopes and dreams. Some of those big hopes and dreams have fallen to the wayside because of poor choices and decisions I've made as a result of being a drug addict. But despite all of that, I'm amply a blessed person. Have a beautiful wife at home, 2 beautiful children, and I just, in spite of it all, I'm just so blessed, and I just hope to be able to kind of give some of that to you guys. That retrospect about life, the ability to be able to say, you know what, I've been through, but look where I am and look where I'm going in spite of all what I've been through. And I'm just a perfect testimony for that. So where I left off yesterday, about 26, 27 years old, I'm heavily addicted to pornography. Lost my virginity when I was 12 years old. That sent me down a path of objectifying women. So every subsequent relationship after that, pretty much the number one thing on my mind through high school and even after, up into my 20s, was sex. I saw women as sexual objects by which I could sexually gratify myself. So that was one problem. Which was also just an extension of being a drug addict and having addictive behaviors. Because we talked about when you're a drug addict, that risky behavior of doing drugs is not solely confined to just doing drugs. Now, is it? We talked about pornography, sex addict. One guy jumped in my comments and made a great point. He was like, no, that's completely true, man. He said, I used to be addicted to gambling. Perfect example. If it's not drugs, you're going to find something else to obsess about. You're going to find something else to be addicted to. And that's just part of having the mindset of a drug addict. It's a very specific mindset. And that's one of the things that people don't really understand. So when I was born 47 years ago, I was born with a hernia. And what I mean by that is that hernia happened at some point while I was still in utero, while I was still developing inside my mother's womb. And I had what was called a hydrocele hernia. And I've talked about this a little bit on the channel, but I'm going to recap it and then go even a little further on it. And so I was born with this, but at that point it wasn't safe to do a surgery on me until I was a little older. They don't like to do invasive surgeries on like little infants and stuff because their immune systems and that everything can become so easily compromised because of the immaturity of all the developing systems in a young baby. So I was somewhere around 2.5, maybe 3 years old when I finally got a surgery done to correct this, what was called a hydrocele hernia repair. And so I got that done. Never really had any issue with it, other than my left testicle doesn't hang quite as low as my right one. I told you I say shit on here that people wouldn't normally say. It's true story though. True story. This is probably a good 1/2 inch lower in my right testicle. But anyway, so never really had any issues with it. It never really kept me from doing anything other than, I do have a scar maybe about this long, kind of on my lower abdominal area, in my upper like groin area. Well, I did have some instances as I was growing up, and I remember being doubled over, curled up in a fetal position with intense acute pain, like in that area where that scar was. And I had this happen probably, it was no more than a handful of times throughout my whole young life. But I do remember this happening to me at least probably 2 or 3 times in my life where I just would have this outburst of like acute pain in that area. Well, I left off the story yesterday. I'm about 26, 27 years old. I shared the story about crawling through the attic of the house that my parents lived in at that time, a house that my wife and I had built several years before and we're now renting out to my parents. Talked about crawling through a 110-degree attic, to access this access door that led into the master bedroom walk-in closet of my parents, where they had locked up. That's right, I said locked up because I had told them to lock up their opiates because I was admitting to having been stealing their opiates and that I couldn't control it. So they locked the door, put a lock on that door. So I talked about crawling through this attic, sweating profusely, dropping down in the closet just to try to get some opiates. That's how desperate I was and how desperate my addiction had become. And I talked about that yesterday. Well, during this same period of time, at this point, I'm not doing anything else. I'm not drinking. I'm not smoking weed. I'm not doing anything else. I have at this point found the love of my life. And I'm sure you want to know her name. It wasn't a she. It wasn't even a person. It was opiates. It was narcotics. And I mean that because, you know, I would have done anything. Everything else was second fiddle to first having those narcotics. I love my wife, but she was second. I love my child, but he was second. You know, I love my family, but they were second. I was thankful to have a job, you know, to have a college, to be working on a college degree. All of it was second. I had to have the opiates first. So that's what I mean by that, the first love of my life. So at this point, I had become heavily addicted on pain medications by virtue of taking my parents' pain medications. So right around, and some of these dates and times and ages are going to be a little bit off because, like I said, I'm a 47-year-old man. I'm sharing things that happened, you know, close to 20 years ago. So the memories and a lot of that was in a drug-filled haze, if I'm being completely honest. So some of it may not be completely accurate, but I'm trying to access the appropriate dates at the appropriate times as much as possible. Somewhere between 28 and 29 years of age, I began to have pain in this area where the scar was, where I had a hernia repair when I was a 3-year-old child. And you know, back in 1979, when I had this hernia repair, this is 43 years ago, you know, there was no such thing as laparoscopic surgery, where they make this little tiny incision and then they go in there with these little tiny little pin-sized microscopic cameras, and then this tiny little surgical cutting tool, that little baby cutting tool that goes into that little tiny, you know, and there was none of that. You know, back then, to go in there and repair anything, they had to cut a 4.5-inch long incision in your ass. Not in my ass, literally, but, you know, in my groin to repair the hernia. And so I had visited several doctors in regards to this pain that I was feeling. And when I say it was chronic pain that I woke up with and went to bed with every day, I mean that quite literally. And it became something that was probably one of the hardest, most depressing times in my life, that I literally was facing my own mortality, as in, is this pain ever gonna go away? I'm gonna die with this. You know, I'm a 28-year-old man, and you guys have to understand something. I had gone to several doctors to see about this and to get them to somebody to try to look and explain to me what's going on. Had ultrasounds done of the area, whatever, you know, all these different tests. Nobody could find anything. I was basically just getting a bunch of doctors with question marks over their head going, shrugging their shoulders. I don't know. I don't see anything. Everything looks okay, you know, and even at one point, finally had a doctor to pretty much call it like phantom pain, you know, almost like neuropathy, almost like that there was just the pain signals were just incorrectly firing to that area. And one doctor actually gave me something for depression, you know, hoping that would help to fix the issue, because a lot of times when you get something that's like an SSRI or something like that, it can go in and kind of not short circuit, but cut off and offset those regular steady pain signals that have just begun to circulate over and over and over in this, you know, steady sort of way, and actually gave me something for depression for it. It didn't work, obviously, but you can imagine experiencing something like this at 28, 29 years old, and I'm talking about it hurt every day. Every day it hurt from sun up to sundown. It was like a burning almost like a burning, like resonating, like just discomfort and pain in my groin area right there. And this went on for about 6 months, 8 months, literally. Because when I say chronic, I mean it lasted a while. And eventually, after going to several doctors and no one being able to tell me anything, because all right, so first off, when you have something like this going on in your life, something that is a life changing event like this, you go to doctors hoping and praying that you will get some sort of answer, and that some doctor is going to look at you and say, guess what, we found this on the test, and undoubtedly the problem you're having is related to this, and secondly, this is how we're going to fix it. I wasn't getting that. I had been to 3 or 4 different doctors, had multiple different tests performed, and all of the doctors were doing the same thing. They're going, I don't know. All right, well, at this point, I did go to one doctor, and it was well documented by this point that I had visited multiple doctors. So I want to remind you, at this point, I was already addicted to painkillers. I'd been taking my parents' Darvocets, for probably a year or two. It was enough to get me addicted, and I was at this point trying not to come off of these. And so I was still doing that. I was still getting those, and when I wasn't able to get those, I was getting them off the street from somewhere. I didn't have my own prescription at this point, but I was working on it. And the ironic thing is, this thing that went on with my groin, it was almost just like the last straw that took me to the doctor to finally get me some sort of prescription that sent me down that opiate rabbit hole, that opiate addiction rabbit hole. And so I finally went to this one doctor that gave me a prescription for OxyContin. Now, I didn't stay on OxyContin for a long period of time. This was something that was temporary. And what this doctor wanted to do, because I'd seen all these other doctors, they had these tests done, and nobody could find anything other than the fact that they knew I'd had a surgery there. They could visibly see the scar. The best answer that I could get regarding this was that there was probably some pressure being put on one of my nerves in there, because obviously there was some scar tissue, because back in the day these surgeries were very invasive, and when you get cut like that and your body gets cut open, your body's response to that internally on the inside is to develop like scar tissue and stuff around that area where that trauma has occurred. So that was about the best answer I could get. And but there wasn't really an immediate fix for it. You can't, there's no fix for scar tissue, right? The only way to fix scar tissue is to get some other maybe newer age laparoscopic sort of surgery, clear out some of the scar tissue, and then maybe put like some mesh in there or something like that, which is what I have now, but I'll get to that. But at this time, barring doing another surgery, which could possibly cause more trauma to the area, I was being told there's really nothing you can do. We can't find anything. We don't know why you're experiencing this pain. So this one doctor finally wrote me for some OxyContins for a temporary. I only had I had to call, and she told me that she would give me one refill. Basically, they were calling a pain management clinic, and they were going to try to get me into a pain management clinic. Okay. So that I could be seen on a regular basis with getting some narcotics. And this for me at that time was like, for real? Okay, cool. Because this meant for me a possibility of having a steady supply of narcotics, right? That's what I wanted, right? Because I was hooked on the opiates at that point. I was hooked on the painkillers. So she gave me a couple of OxyContins, and the very first weekend that I had these OxyContins, my brother and his wife at the time were over at the house, and we had a bonus room in this upstairs bedroom that we had, and my wife and his wife at the time walk upstairs, and what are me and my brother doing other than snorting the crushed up OxyContin that I had gotten from this doctor? And it was funny because I had already snorted some of it, and my brother was going to, you know, and my brother, you know, my brother's thing is more alcohol. You know, the family's always kind of been concerned a little bit about his drinking and stuff like that. He's never been big into like opiates or narcotics, which just goes to show you everyone's wired differently. You know, for me, nobody's ever been concerned about my alcohol use. I never really drink, you know, but the concerns for my drug use are and should be just as concerning as his, even though it doesn't involve alcohol, even though you can't smell opiate use on someone, so I might be able to hide it a little bit better. You know, it's just as concerning as the drug use that my brother had. But I had already snorted them. His wife at the time comes up, and here we are sitting there with this powder crushed up on the bar upstairs, and I remember the look on the face of his wife was just like, what are you doing? You know, I don't remember if that's exactly what she said, but it was that you could see right through the look on her face, like, what the hell are y'all snorting up your nose? What is this powder that is right? And why do you have an 1.5 inch long straw sitting on the damn bar? And I remember this. I remember this so vividly because my brother is divorced from this lady now, and so this is my ex-sister-in-law. But my wife and I are actually good friends with her and her new husband now, and have been for about 5 or 6 years. And it's funny because I'm her ex-brother-in-law. She used to be married to my brother. And some of the experiences that I've shared with this lady, predominantly because of drug use with my brother, is very, very a very, very interesting dynamic. Her and her current husband now are doing very, very well, and they live 2 miles up the street from my wife and I. And they have a pool that we'll go over there, you know, a few times a year to parties and, you know, swim with them and hang out and everything. So it's kind of an interesting story. I'm still in contact with this lady to this day, which I think is pretty cool. You know, there's no hard feelings or anything like that, but she expressed to my brother at that time, you know, don't do that. You know, it was made very clear. I don't remember exactly what was said, but it was made very clear that if you do that, and I watch you do that, if I watch you snort that up your nose, we're going to have problems. You know, there's going to be some problems, as in starting right now, tonight, we're going to have some problems. And I sat there and watched my brother snort that OxyContin up his nose right in front of his wife. Right in front of his wife. And obviously I had done it too, but I had already done it, you know, and my wife at that time especially was absolutely not cool with us doing that. Little did she know what kind of problem this would become later on. You know, at this time, it was kind of just seen as like a measure of disrespect, because she obviously didn't want me doing that and had expressed that she didn't want me doing that. But here I was in the home that we own together under our marital roof doing whatever the fuck I wanted to do was what I was doing. And so at that time, they kind of just looked at it as, you know, two young guys who like to party just up there having fun, and disrespecting their wives a little bit. You know, little did they know there's so many more subsequent layers that would come with this addiction other than just that particular story. But I wanted to share that story in particular because this is a perfect illustration as to, You know, someone like myself who has always been known to abuse things. Any drug that I've ever had and that I've ever gotten a hold of, I have gotten and used that drug with the intent of going overboard with the intent of abusing it. I did the same thing with Adderall, and I didn't get to it today, but I'm going to go into that in my next video, because this video of OxyContin, I'm doing a video right now, Lord. This prescription of OxyContin that I got led to my getting hooked into a pain clinic where I was getting, you know, a regular prescription of like Vicodin, and then I told them that didn't work, so then they bumped me up to Percocets, and I get into this rhythm now where I'm getting every month these opiate medications, and they're not lasting me, because as you know, as an addict, they don't last. They never last for the full month. So even when I was with the pain clinic, I was taking a certain amount every month, but then I was running out, and then I was getting them on the street, or then I was stealing more from my parents, or then I was finding a way to get some over here, or finding a way, you know, I have my sources. You're a resourceful individual. Drug addicts are some of the most resourceful people you can imagine when it comes to getting their drugs, you know. And I'm going to tell the next time how eventually this came to a head, and how eventually the pain clinic said, you got to go. And because a pain clinic, they want to be in charge of every speck of narcotic that you are taking into your body. And they will randomly, when you come in, drug test you to test levels of certain narcotics and certain medications found in your blood. And if they find anything that is outside the scope or the realm of what they themselves have prescribed you, you got problems. And they will give you like a lesser amount and give you instructions on how to taper, and then they will kick your ass out the door, and they won't see you anymore. That eventually happened to me. And so I'm going to share that story the next time. And then once I share that story, that's going to lead down a whole new path of opiate addiction that lasted for years. And I have way more downs than ups, but a lot of interesting stories, and a lot of stories that once you hear them, you'll look and say, wow, man, you're lucky to be here. And I hadn't even gotten to my stint with abusing Adderall and snorting Adderall up my nose, you know, crushing up Adderall and snorting them 6, 7, 8 times per day as I was recording music with my brother, and then staying up for 2-3 days straight and literally not closing my eyes while I was abusing Adderall and opiates at the same time. Man, I'm lucky to be alive. You know, I don't know why God still has me here and why God has still chosen to have me here, but you know, there are times where I had so many opiates in my system that my breath at night was shallow to the point where I was literally afraid I was just going to take my last breath and then die in my sleep. Literally. There were times where I was scared to shut my eyes because my respiration was that depressed and that repressed. And I'll share all that. And I'll share how I got kicked out of the pain clinic, and then what happened from there in my next video. Like the video, share your own comment, share your own story, tell me a little bit of what's happened to you. I love hearing that stuff from you guys. I find it really interesting because, you know, we all have a lot in common. You know, that's why we're all here, to support each other in that way. And Kratom, I'm taking one less capsule today than I took yesterday, so I've been at right about 11 grams. Today I'll take about 10 grams. So every few days I'm going to start chopping that down again, you know, trying to get myself to a lower dosage. And, you know, I hope to eventually come off of it as well. But anyway, appreciate you guys checking me out again, and subscribe to the channel. This is Corey. I'm out. Peace.